All right, so we are back in the RoadID studios with return. This is like a three-peat. I think this is like hitting for the cycle or a hat trick.
Is there even a point to doing an introduction when you've already done 2 introductions and we could just jump in and start talking?
Yeah, well, we'll just do that.
Yeah.
With us today, this is CNC weekend, the recording weekend of all madness, and we have Jake Wells back in the studio with us. Jake, welcome.
Thanks. Here we are.
Fired up. Glad
to be back.
you're here. Yeah, it's good to have you back, man. It's good. We've been catching up and having all sorts of dark web conversations that you will never hear.
We turned all of our phones off.
Yeah, it's like a skiff in here. No one has a phone that's working, and no one knows all the details. But we're glad to see you, man. You're on the other side of a lot of stuff. We're excited because you Pebbles will not hear this at this time, but we're getting to do Unknown Country this weekend, so we're glad you're here for that. That's going to be fun to show everybody that.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what everybody thinks of that film. I'm super proud of it.
Yeah, it's cool to have. I mean, it's cool to have you in town, obviously, but it's cool to have you in town not only to race bikes, but to be part of the event on Friday night and showing the documentary. But then you're also here with Adam and Brennan and Turner and all the kids helping out with the Alpha Groove Subaru team. So you're a busy boy. And we've heard that you got some other stuff that we're going to talk about as well. You got some other stuff brewing that we're gonna help promote, I think.
I think so, for sure. So, I don't want to spoil the film, right? We don't want to spoil the film. Pebbles, you need to either go to a showing near you, and I'm sure they can go to the Jake Wells fan site. What is that? It's the Jake Wells fan site. You gotta build a fan site or something.
I need one, right?
Yeah, but you can go to Jake's Instagram or even our show notes. We've got the trailer there, and it can direct you to that and find the showings for this. So you need to go see this. It's an incredible film, but I don't want to spoil it. But you had a pretty wild DKXL. Like, you set out. I was watching you on my tracker wearing my Jake Wells T-shirt. I think I texted you like the day before. I'm like, as soon as the gun goes off, the T-shirt goes on. And I was watching you, and you were having a rocking beginning of the race. Like, you were out there making things happen right at the beginning. That was a pretty strong, beginning for your day.
Yeah. So you will be able to find the film dates on Mixed Media.
Oh, nice.
On Justin
Bailog's site.
site. So should have dates on there, and then ultimately, after we're done with our screening tour, you'll be able to find the film there.
Yeah, so the link in the show notes actually goes to the Mixed Media Machine website.
Perfect.
So you can go find it all right there. It'll take you directly there. It'll give you all the showings. Justin Bailog, incredibly talented guy, and it's always interesting when you're doing a documentary like that, because it's probably the first time in your life where you've had cameras following you around for any length of time. But in terms of being invisible, he was basically invisible to when we were recording here in the studio, and did such an amazing job of taking so much content.
He was over my right shoulder for like 4 hours.
He was invisible to me. You were blocking.
Well, and that's what my daughter noticed once we watched the film. She was like, "You don't even see Justin."
Yeah.
He's the cameraman.
That's his job.
Right.
That's how he does this.
Well, but to his credit, he did the same thing with Shared Territory, where he was the cameraman, but he was also one of the 2 guys that was actually writing. Yeah, co-star in the documentary. And just to think of everything that went into all of that, of hauling all of that gear with you, in addition to all of the stuff that you need to. It was Iceland, right? To ride across Iceland. And then in some of the closing scenes, they show him, flying the drone and all of that stuff. And you think about just the logistics of all of that, and it's like it's
really impressive.
Special, very talented dude.
What they put together, and I knew the quality going in. Like, I knew what they are capable of.
Oh, sure.
Him and I mean, it's mostly him, but he has a lot of help. But then to see how, like, behind the scenes, behind the curtain, it's pretty cool. So really fortunate to work with him on this film, and definitely excited about how it turned out. And so Doug, to your question of how our point of how the race was going, everything started out fantastic. We went through the first 110 miles in like 6 hours, I think, something like that.
That's pretty breezy.
Rolling.
It's cooking.
Yeah, we're going pretty quick. And even so, for me, the darkest hour was 3 3 a.m., I'd say, somewhere around there.
That's a pretty dark hour, even
Yeah.
if you're not like out riding a bike. Like
We're talking, emotionally.
That's
not,
when
like,
mom and dad
literally,
expect you to be home for
Right.
sure.
Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, the film captures it pretty well of kind of the way things went sideways. But in the end, I was able to finish it and able to kind of check that box. And for me, it was a big learning opportunity, and that was essentially what I was seeking. Like going into it, I had never put myself in that place of riding for that amount of time, riding through the night like that, and there's just so much that you can't simulate. Like in your training, in your people can tell you all they want about this is what you're going to experience, this is how you're going to have to handle it, or this is what works for me, but you're really are left to your own devices to figure that out, figure that downward spiral out for yourself, and either you pull yourself out of it and press on, or you don't, and I was definitely questioning whether I was going to be able to pull myself out of it.
So you mentioned the things that you intentionally put yourself. I mean, no one puts themselves in the position to be in as bad of a state as you might have felt.
Right.
But you chose this event because you wanted to learn something out of it. So I'm curious, what did you want to learn pre DKXL?
I didn't know what that thing was. And I think I touch on that in the film. We were talking about, the why behind, why you do these events. And so many times I don't think it's really made evident until you're in it, maybe even after, maybe even 2-3 weeks or months after, and you're looking back like, something in your life happens. And you're like, that experience at that event is helping me through this situation right now.
Well, and that's the obvious
that's
follow.
The follow.
Is what did you get out of it now that
Yeah.
you have the ability of hindsight, and it's been that 4-5 months.
Yeah. For me, the real thing going into it was it was scary. It was unknown. I mean, that's kind of how we got the name of the actual title of the film. It was just completely unknown country for me. Like I'd never been into that place. And so going through that and pulling out of it, not pulling out of the race, but actually pulling yourself out of that downward spiral and then pushing through. I guess what I took out of it was the fact that it's the darkest hour, right? It's 3 a.m., it's 4 a.m., and the sun, the sun's going to come up, but it's a long way away, and I did have my family there, and they were out cheering at different places on the course. And I had just come into this gas station, kind of one of our scheduled, refill stations, and they were there, and I actually left. I came in kind of pretty rattled, and then got my act together and rolled out. And I got about a half mile up the road and was like, this is just not safe for me to continue. And so I rode back to the gas station and kind of sat there. And there's a little bit of a roadside moment that my wife and I have that's captured on the film that before I come back to the gas station. And I think that's what I took away from it, is that you can pull yourself out of these situations. Sometimes you gotta just ride the storm out, right? Or just kind of keep pressing, and at that point I wasn't actually making any forward progress, because I did just kind of shut down for about 3 hours, there at that, in Cottonwood Falls. So I wasn't making any forward progress, but it allowed me to go ahead and finish that race off, and finish off the event. Because that was the thing I think that was so daunting. You come in, you're completely empty. And for me, I wasn't able to eat. I was having real stomach issues and not able to get any calories in for probably since about dark, so 9 o'clock. And then now here we are at like 3, 4 a.m. and really not able to eat anything. And then you look at what's ahead of you, and I've got 150 miles to go. We're 200 miles in, like I got 150 miles to go. We're barely over halfway. Like this just is not feasible. It's not safe. It's not smart to continue.
So break that down.
Yeah.
You're talking about this is my darkest hour. You're having a moment with your life, or with your wife and your life, I'm sure as well. What was your process of pause, collect yourself?
Yeah.
Am I going to finish this? Okay, if I am, what do I need to do? Like, how did you approach that in that moment? Because for anyone listening who's been in that spot, maybe not as bad of a bonk as you were experiencing, but for anyone who's been on a long enough ride, you've probably had the experience of why is this so hard to go this slow, and I'm falling apart, and I'm angry, and just there's chaos is happening within your body, and you think about then to get back on and go another 6-7 hours. Like,
right.
What was your process that you went through to kind of reassess and figure out what was next?
Well, and for me, I was really having trouble processing anything. I mean, I was really struggling to like balance was really bad, and I was throwing up, and when I talked to Linda, I was like, I just don't know if it's safe to continue. I don't feel like it makes sense to go on, and she was really just steady, just like really calm, and just really not really trying to convince me to do anything, but just said, you don't have to make that choice right now. You don't have to make that decision yet. Like you can wait as long as you want. Like at that point, I was still in like 5th place.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, I had processed it as a way of like, all right, I was in the front of the race, and then the wheels fell off, and then so now I was looking at like, I don't even think I can finish this thing, and then the reality of the fact that, I'm still actually in 5th. Not that I was like with any kind of hopes of getting back to the front of the race, but there's a lot of people behind me still. It's that tortoise and the hare kind of thing. Like I could sit here and take a nap and wake up and still be, front third of the race, So, and I think that's actually what happened. Like I took a nap. I decided to sleep because people were coming in, guys that I knew in the race were coming in. Like they could tell I was in a bad place, and they're like, dude, you just got to go lay down. Like go lay down and try to eat something, and you're going to come around. And, but it's just hard to listen. It's hard to like actually hear what people are saying, yeah. And one guy told me, he's like, I just took an 8-minute nap. I feel great. And I was like, 8 minutes, man.
8 minutes. He's like, I timed it. Yeah.
Like 8 minutes is going to work for me. It's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But hindsight, it maybe not 8 minutes, but 20 minutes probably would have been all I needed, But I went and laid down with the intent of, like,
I'll wake up when I wake up.
Yeah, and almost really like I'm delaying the inevitable, and this is, here we are, we're doing this film, and this is gonna look so contrived.
Good God.
And so I probably, now that I've pushed through that, I would definitely eat a few things differently. Like I would have definitely eaten differently from the Casey's.
Not all those Snickers that you had. All the Snickers that you had.
But because I think what I really needed was sodium, and I had taken a caffeine pill, because I knew we were going into the night, and I think that maybe set my stomach off a little bit, so I probably would have laid back on the caffeine. But these are all the things that you have to figure out. You know? And so, in hindsight, I think I would have, if now that I know what that feeling is, I would just shut down right then and say, all right, I'm just going to lay down for 10 minutes and then see how I feel, and then just keep going, try to eat something.
So what do you think it is about like laying down for 10 minutes? Like what happens in that time that changes your body chemistry, that changes your mindset, all of that stuff?
It's probably just a break, a central nervous system break. Like you're able to, because you're so amped from the event. Like we were riding pretty hard, but I was managing it fine. Like I was not, at my limit. We're just riding fast, but it felt good. Like I wasn't having trouble, like, fueling or anything like that until
you had trouble.
Until I had trouble. And then I was like, I can't force any food down. And anytime I did, it would come right back up. So, then, I think what actually, and you're riding at night, right? So you're in this almost like tunnel, right? Your field of vision is just this spot of light out in front of you. And then you're also just in your own head, like there's nothing but thoughts. And I didn't have anybody with me, because I had, I was with the leader, and into the night, we went into the dark, together. And then probably around 10:30, I had a front puncture, and it sealed like right away, thanks to Stan's No Tubes, friend of the show.
Good job. Friend of the show, Stan's No Tubes.
So I had to hop off, and I just spun it, and it sealed. And so, but it was a big enough gap that then I lost contact with Jay. So I was actually looking forward to just riding together through the night. Like, okay, we're settled in here. Let's just kind of get through the night, and then we'll see what tomorrow brings, and then that went out the window. So I was by myself, and I think it's probably this like sensory overload, like, I don't know.
You got your brain working. Yeah. You're seeing something you're not used to seeing for hours and hours and hours. Just all of those sensory things have got to be really struggling.
Well, and it's hard to put yourself in that position unless you've been there, right? Because it's like, I don't know if anyone listening has ever gone into an old film reel room where it's completely black.
Yeah.
All of your other senses kind of go on extra alert. And if you only have this tiny field of vision, you're hearing every crunch from every piece of gravel. Your brain is on 11. Yeah. The conversation inside of your head is on 11. Like, everything is heightened because everything around you is kind of turned down because you don't have the sun lighting up the entire landscape of the area and the heat and the sunlight and all of that stuff. It's a different world.
You said something interesting that I wanted to ask you about. You said that, hey, we were out here, we were trying to make this film.
Yeah.
This is going to feel contrived.
Right.
That narrative and that pressure alone in your brain while you're trying to do the hardest thing that you've done.
Yeah.
It seems unfathomable to me because there's so many layers of peeling that thing back. How did you deal with that process? Because that seems like the thing that would trigger me. Like, I'd be like, I can't fail because of this. This is the thing I'm doing, and this is going to screw up my storyline or this whole time and all these things I've invested and done. Yeah.
Well, and I knew that it wasn't scripted, so I was like, well, this is the storyline, But I was like, this is a shitty movie. This is not going to be.
Where's the victory lap? Right?
No one's gonna want to watch this. Because like, I did all this training and prep, and then you pulled out at 4 a.m. when it got hard.
But how did you square those?
So, and that was one of the things that that I realized whenever I was there in Cottonwood Falls was I came back to the gas station, went over, and actually it was before I laid down, I realized it. And it's like, the reason you're here, and that was what Linda kept saying, was like, just don't make the decision now. Just think about why you're here. And the reason I was there, like we talked about before, was to inspire and motivate, and the most inspiring thing I could do at that moment was not get in the car, So the best way to motivate people would be to finish this fucking thing. You know what I mean? So go lay down, take a nap, and sleep as long as you want. The sun's going to come up, and then, and well, that's what happened. I mean, I went and laid down. There's this park right behind the gas station, so I just walked over, laid on this. There's like a wall, that just like a 3-foot high wall that goes around.
Beautiful section of the documentary, by the way, just from a cinematic but also a metaphorical perspective of you leaving that park and the sun's coming up and it's like Jake is reborn. He's getting back after it. It was the first time I watched it. I was like, you talk about contrived. You could not script that kind of stuff, but it just felt like, okay, this is where the crescendo of this documentary is happening, because it's like you said, like, let's finish this fucking thing. Like, let's get after it. Like, reset, let's go.
And it was really strange because I'm there in that park and I'm all but ready to cash in my chips, and wake up I didn't set an alarm. I was just like, I'm just gonna sleep until I don't want to sleep, and then I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna go, and or not,
Right.
And then I remember waking up and right when I kind of sat up, a couple of guys in the race rode by. And we're close enough to the road there, like the park, the little pavilion that I was kind of chilling in was close enough to the road that they could tell it was me, And so my buddy Nick rides by and he's like, "Come on, man, let's do this," And I was like, right when I was getting up and not really having to make a decision, but that was the time. I was like, all right, let's do this, And in the film, I don't say anything. I just kind of wake up and just get back on the bike and go. And I asked Linda, because it's all fuzzy, and her and
I'll imagine why.
Shocking.
Yeah. So they were sitting right there. And I said, "Did I say anything to you guys when I got up?" And she said, "You didn't say anything. I'd taken my socks and shoes off because they were wet, because we had gone through some creek crossings like a few miles before we got to that town." And she's like, "You sat up and you put your socks and shoes on and put your helmet on and said, 'Here we go.'" And that's it. I was like, I mean, that's kind of what I remember, but I didn't remember if there was any conversation going on. And she's like, "You didn't say a word." And she's like, "This is kind of cool."
So outside of
she's like,
that was
that's
pretty
kinda
sweet
badass.
moment.
I didn't know until you put your helmet on. I didn't know if you were just going to like pedal over to the car.
right, you're just walking over to the car and be like, "Here we go, we're going home."
Yeah.
Going to the showers, going to the hotel.
Yeah.
So other than catching some sleep, what did you do to kind of reset? Like, I mean, we're talking about Casey's General Stores here in terms of like what your food options are and whatever you had in your bag and on your bags on your bike.
What was your favorite snack to fix you?
Pringles.
Yeah.
Flavor? What flavor?
Regular.
Yeah.
Sodium. I mean, that it goes to your point of like needing sodium.
And I wanted that texture, like the crunchy.
Now
texture.
I want Pringles.
I know, right?
That's a very specific texture. Did you want Pringles texture or just like potato chips?
Just crunchy. Just like anything that's not soggy, soft. Squishy.
I mean, everything on you was squishy. I would imagine at that point.
Right. So, and somebody had turned me on to during the race. Someone told me about Arizona iced tea.
Ooh,
the can.
Yeah,
the giant can.
Yeah,
the Magnum.
Yeah.
And
so, he's because my buddy Nick had done the Divide Trail, and he said, yeah, on the Divide I figured out that these cans of tea are great because there's a little bit of caffeine in them. It's not over the top, and they're pretty smooth. It's not like a soda.
No carbonation.
Right.
Yeah.
They fit in a cage too.
And they're they fit right into a bottle. Like you can
empty the whole thing right in a bottle.
Into your bottle.
Yeah.
And so I started drinking those, and that seemed to bring me around.
New sponsor and
friend
friend
of the show.
Arizona iced tea, and our friends at Pringles. Lay's, isn't that Lay's, right? Pringles is a Lay's company.
I don't know.
I
feel like they're local.
We'll find out.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, and that's really probably what I needed was the sodium,
Yeah, your body was telling you, yeah.
So, but then at that point, I got in with a couple of other guys, and, your complete state of mind shifts from, and I feel like I told myself I wasn't going into this with the mentality of I'm racing it. I just want to finish this thing. But then you find yourself in the front, like our front group of 6 turned to 4, and then it quickly turned to 2. And then, I was like, well, anything could happen still, like anybody could have a flat, or I could just, fall apart. But, so then whenever that's completely out of reach, you're really just kind of out there. You're like, all right, let's just get this thing done. I'm not, even at that point when I got rolling again, I was really just planning on getting to the next town. Like, let me just ride to the next town. It's 35 miles up the road, and then see how I'm doing.
Yeah, just chunk it off in your brain that way and be like, all right, this is the place I got to get to next. When I get there, I'll stop, grab some food. Like, there's not pressure anymore for you to be like, okay, I got to make a quick stop and do this. I need to pee. What order should I do this in? Right? Like, none of that. That's kind of like, all right, I'll stop for as long as I need to and keep going. Yeah.
So then I got in with a couple of other guys, and we just kind of rode together, and we talked and told bad jokes. And, just one of the guys lives there in Emporia. One of the guys is a buddy of mine from Boulder that I knew, but, in passing, you know what I mean? Like we knew each other casually, and now we know each other, you know what I mean? So, that's pretty cool. And then we picked up another guy. We kind of lost the local guy at some point, cause he was really struggling. And then, so Nick and I rode together for a bit, and then we ended up catching up to another guy, at one of the gas stations, and we rode in together. So it was good. You get to know people.
What it doesn't cover it in the film, but I gotta believe that there was a lot going on physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of the oolies, crossing the finish line, getting to see wife, kid, like all of those things. So describe rolling into town, finishing, and then what happens in the 15, 20 minutes, whatever, next couple hours of like finishing this monstrosity.
I don't think it really hit me for a while, that I actually was able to complete it. You roll in, and really once we had gotten like 20 miles out, I generally knew where we were. Yeah. And was like, all right, we're gonna get this thing done. So it wasn't like it came out of nowhere. Like, oh, look, we pulled it off. But to have my family there, my sister was there, and have my wife and daughter there, and then just having Justin there, and he and I spent so much time together, prepping for this event. And then just friends and sponsors, and everybody was there and everybody was just, it was just hugs everywhere, like few tears, lots of big hugs. And I think that watching the film, you see my daughter in the film, and having her there and being able to have a front row seat to that, I think was pretty, it was big for me, and I'll be interested to see how that plays out for her. Like if that is an experience that she takes something big away from. I don't know.
Have you asked her about that?
We've talked a little bit about it. I think that, and she had a front row seat not only to the finish but also to the dark part.
For sure.
And Linda's seen it before, right? Like she knew I was going to be okay, but she didn't know if I was going to finish or not. But she knew I wasn't in danger, But I think Tatum was pretty shook by it, see me in that place. So she's just never seen me that vulnerable,
I've watched it a few times now, and watched it with my wife, and she actually wanted to watch it again right away. She wished it was longer, and her takeaway was that she really likes she liked you, but Tatum stole the entire film.
Tatum, star of the film.
That's the
just
story of my life.
there's so
That's
many.
how it's supposed to be, buddy.
There's so many clips in there where she's a very small part of the scene, but she can steal the scene. And seeing how close your entire family is, and seeing how they were willing to go so far above and beyond to be there every step of the way, and it probably would have been the exact same thing had Justin not been there with film crew and all of the other stuff.
Sure.
They would have been right by your side, and I think it was interesting watching her watch it, because she was coming in completely kind of virgin to the entire thing, whereas you know, we had talked about it previously, and Doug and I had been following it and kind of knew what happened in the race, and had talked a little bit with you post about what happened, but hadn't really gotten an idea of what the film was. And then when it comes through an email and Justin sends us one of the first copies of it, and it was like, wow, that was, not only is it's a really good display of what events like that are all about, but it's a really good display of what events like that mean to not only the riders, but the entire support group around each one of the individual riders, whether it's DKXL or it's Kanza or it's the 100, or if you go out and do 10 miles in around Emporia on a road bike and think that you accomplished something. Like, the support network of that surrounds everybody is like, that was what it was about.
Well, and I wasn't real sure how it was gonna come off, you know, how it was gonna be received, and just what Justin was gonna do with it, because, you know, I had seen a lot of the footage from like the training and the prep, you know, the stuff we had done in Lexington and all that, but I hadn't seen any of the DK footage, and he sent me the link and said, "Hey, here's the final cut. Do you want to watch it before I, you know, make it live, like, and send it out to the partners?" And I said, "No, you know, I trust you and your creativity, and let's just do it." And so, you know, before it was kind of final, he said, "Do you want to look at it and change anything?"
Right.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even watch it until the same link that you got, like the same link I got.
So what was your first reaction when you watched it?
Oh man. Honestly, I think the thing that really became apparent to me, and it was interesting because this whole similar storyline was happening at the Tour Divide. You know, I don't know if you followed the drama that was going on at the Tour Divide, but it was a similar storyline, because the DKXL, it's supposed to be completely self-supported, right? So, and there's no rules to say you can't have, you know, fans and family out cheering you on. And whenever we approached Lifetime and the you know, Jim and Leland about doing this film, you know, we were very adamant about maintaining the purity of the of the event, you know, the spirit of the event, and make sure that we didn't just by having a film crew there, we weren't going to take something away from the experience for me personally, but then also for the other competitors, right? And to know what happened in the middle of the night, and to know that for me, my personal journey going through that, having my family there probably influenced the way that I finished that event, right? Whether or not I finished was probably because they were there, right? And Linda and I have talked about this quite a bit. And, you know, the thing that I've come to realize with it, or come to grips with, is that these kind of events, everybody's in a different place, right? You come into these events and you're in a different place. Whether you've done, this is your first one, whether you've done these kind of events before, or someone like Lael, who this is like the shortest event she will do all year,
right?
You know, and it's just one day, one night, you know, so it's kind of old hat for her. So, but I'd never been in that place, right? And you really don't know how you're going to react until you get there. So it's still your journey, and I think that it's such a true example of life, you surround yourself with this support staff, in life. Like, hopefully you surround yourself with people that you can really rely on when the shit hits the fan,
right?
And in the end, the sun's going to come up the next day, and you're going to be able to push through this, and you're going to get to the finish, And I'm reminded of this quote. I don't know who said it initially, but it has to do with like pushing through. And how does it go? It'll be better in the end, right? Things will get better in the end. And if it's not better, you're not at the end. So I guess the idea is like, yeah, you're going to go through these peaks and valleys, and whenever you, things will be better in the end. So if you're in a shit place, you got to keep going.
Yeah, the story's not over.
You're not at the end yet.
Yeah, the story is not finished.
So yeah, I was pretty sensitive to the way the film was going to portray what happened out there, and I wasn't sure if it was going to be well received from partners, sponsors, and from the community, the gravel community, and the race promoters, right? So
because of the potential perception that it's ruining the purity, or something else.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the actual rules of the event, like you're shouldn't have any outside contact with your support crew, right? And it so happened that my support crew was also my fan club, right? That was following me around. So, whether or not that would maybe disqualify you, I don't know. But for me, it was because that was the thing. Then I started looking at what like Lael went through on the Divide, and she was in a kind of a similar scenario. She's like found herself in this place. She wasn't in a place where she was any kind of like physically, under
right.
She was just shut down because of weather. And then she decided, like, yeah, I know this is going to disqualify me from this race, but I'm going to do it anyway, and then I'm going to go finish this thing, right? So it was just kind of interesting to see like that play out. Like, okay, this is just how these things work sometimes,
Yeah, and the place you're entering it from is the place that Jake's entering it from. Like, if John and Doug went and did it, we don't have a film crew unless it's like America's Funniest Home Videos, right? Like trying to like watch these two dumbasses, right? But you had a whole setup, and that was your entry point to this thing. Mm-hmm. And it's not like you were getting, sticky bottles and towed around. That's not what was happening. No. And you entered this event with your set of guidelines and not outside the spirit of the rules, really, when it comes down to it. Right. And that's okay, because the next person was running a different race. They were doing their own race. It is, people always tell you, ride your own race. You were riding your own race, and part of that, this was part of that. How has it been received?
Oh, amazing. The reception has been amazing. We screened it in Arkansas, which is pretty special because I was back home seeing my family in Arkansas and doing the Fayette Cross weekend, and then stayed the week and did some skills clinics with the local cross community there in Bentonville, and then did the Epic Rides Oz Trails the next weekend. And so we got to show the film, and that was the first screening. Which
At one of the coolest places ever.
Yeah.
The Meteor Guitar Museum
Gallery
thing. That place is really cool. I've been there before. It's sweet.
Yeah, it is really cool. And I was really shocked to see that the date was available, because the link came out. I was like, hey, we're going to Arkansas. I wonder if I can get this thing screened there. And then we were trying to, chatting with people that were there in Bentonville area and trying to figure out where we should screen it. And the Meteor, I was like, we did this event there when I was there for the IMBA Summit, and there's all these guitars hanging out. And my buddy Mike was like,
"You were at that IMBA Summit?"
Yeah,
I was at that IMBA Summit. That was they had the party there. They had a party there the last night. And that was awesome. Yeah, the Meteor.
I went there it was a film about like how to build a bike park in your.
I was in that. We were in the same room. Didn't even know it. Small freaking world.
So yeah, I got to screen it there. And
now that it comes, now actually I'm like, yeah, I think I saw Jake there. Now that I think about it, we'll talk later. I think I know exactly what you're wearing.
Oh wow,
it's totally weird.
That is weird.
Yeah,
just imprinted. Okay,
super weird.
Yeah,
derail the conversation.
Sorry, Jesus.
So that was really cool to be able to screen the movie there and have my family there. My parents, they didn't come up for the race, but they had heard the war stories, So they were there, and then just people that I grew up with and good family friends were there. So, and then we did, a Q&A after the film, and it was just great questions, and, just everybody just, people, there were tears everywhere. My mom was crying. She was asking, crazy questions. She's asking me about, like, if I went and got a checkup, like a echocardiogram or anything after the event.
A wellness check.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm worried about your heart. Are you okay, son?
Right.
Oh,
Well, it's funny because we're taking questions and I'm on stage with the mic, and she raised her hand, and so I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good. And so she asked the question about, did you think about getting a checkup, like get your body get checked up after the event? And I was like, so I disclaimer to everyone, like, okay, this is my mom asking this question. And
my mom's making sure I'm okay.
She's a nurse, and so everybody got a good laugh out of the fact that she had that question. But it's probably a legit question. And in her mind, she's like, you put yourself through something that's pretty strenuous, so you should probably make sure you're okay after that. But, I think that I had nothing planned until August. So I was like, I'm just going to go and relax.
Sleep for
right,
a while.
Yeah. Sleep and not look at bikes. And
yeah.
Well, speaking of that, it is well past August, and, we've been watching. You've been, crushing some cross races and doing some fun stuff. Obviously, you were out in Arkansas doing that and at Fayette Cross, and you've been out and about. This is a busy time of year for you. You're in Cincinnati because we have an event here, and that is like part of the reason to be here. You spend a lot of time, I think it's something we didn't really talk about on the last show, but you spend a lot of time supporting the Alpha crew. We've had a number of folks from Alpha, either riders or even the man with the loudest power washer in all of the American pits. There is a aspect of your coaching and what you're doing with the Alpha team. What does that look like for you on a week to week or day to day basis? What is your role kind of with them?
So I've been working with those guys this is, I think, our third season. Adam approached me, I think, when I was still racing for No Tubes, racing elites for No Tubes. He said, if and when the time comes and you want to step away, we'd love to have you as part of our program, someone that can kind of mentor the younger riders, which I thought was very flattering, to even be considered for that. But so they invited me to team camp a couple years ago, and they were in Steamboat for a long weekend. And so I went up and just kind of spent the weekend with the riders and just kind of teaching them a little bit about, what I've learned over the years of being a professional and how to conduct yourself, professionally with your sponsors and online and, through social media and those kind of things. And then, we talked a lot about nutrition and a lot about just the importance of sleep and those kind of things. And then we actually did some training with some testing, like some threshold tests and those kind of things to kind of set the marks for the season, So all of the riders have their own coach at some level. Some of the younger riders maybe aren't getting quite as into the power numbers and heart rate and those things, but so now it's kind of progressed more into more hands-on on any given weekend. So like last year and this year, I'm actually traveling with the team and kind of to be a third hand, so I've got because of my experience and years of racing and the support I've had, and I understand what the riders are going to want and need, kind of before they have to ask for it.
Yeah, you have a little anticipatory, right? You're like, okay, well, this is going to be a muddy race, so they're going to want to make sure we got some extra socks and some, those sort of things.
Yeah, more like a bucket of water to like clean off when they get back, like in the pit area, in the team area. So when they come back from a muddy race, they need a way to like clean up before they go to podium, or before even if they're doing their pre-ride lap, before they get on the trainer and go to the start, they want to they're not taking a shower, but they can at least, clean up. So yeah, those kind of things, right? So the importance of post-race recovery meals and having, so it's a little bit of a soigneur role and a mechanic role, not so much working on bikes, because Adam's really good at that, and he's been bringing Doug in as well, and Doug's really knows his stuff, when it comes to mechanic stuff. So that's been great, because I can just kind of put all that stuff onto them and just like hand them the bike, and I'm not having to like make sure that the brakes are good and the shifting is good. But I can go help wash bikes, whenever we're in the pits, just to have a third hand to run a bike over to the power washer, and because we have got 2 males and 2 females, so and ideally those riders are close to each other toward the front, so when you have that, having like we ran into it in Arkansas, it was super muddy on Sunday, and so we were washing bikes every half lap, so
lots of running.
Yeah, need a lot of
Let's
hands
get your
for that.
openers.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it's I've already
After
raced.
your race, so it's like it's your cool down.
Right. So so it's worked out really well. I enjoy it. I enjoy being around the younger riders. We have 2 new riders on the team this year, Ross Elwood and Lauren Zorner. So Lauren's been with the program,
right, but not at the elite
but not
level.
at the elite
Yeah,
level, right. So she hasn't been kind of in this little 4-person team thing. So it's really fun to kind of be around them and see, how they're processing things, and see the difference, between someone like Brandon, who's been in the program, for I think 4 seasons, so he's able to really understand. I mean, he doesn't need much, right? Like he gets it. He understands what he needs to do to be firing on all cylinders. But then to watch the other riders looking up to him, looking up to Turner, it's funny, because these kids are 16, 19, 20 years old, but they've been racing bikes as long as I have,
And in talking to, like, having Brandon and Turner on the show, I think anybody that listened to either one of those episodes would question, like, are they really that young?
Sure.
Because they've matured so much, and they do such a fantastic job of being introspective and just talking naturally and not being overwhelmed by a scenario or by a situation. And so I'm curious, so you have all of this experience that you can kind of wash over somebody with, and I'm sure that if you let it, you could be overwhelming and just like, oh, I want to talk about this, and then that's going to remind me of this, and now I want to talk about that. So where, like, say Ross coming into the program, right, where do you start on kind of day one with him of establishing, because one, you have to establish a relationship first before you can ever, I mean, you have to have that trust and that reliability. So where do you start in kind of that process?
Well, and I think a lot of that comes from Adam, like, I mean, the whole program is really a testament to him, like he's done such an amazing job with that program. And, he picks the riders, and I think so he looks at the riders and says, who's going to be a good fit, and who's going to be the riders that's going to, that can get to that next level with the right kind of support, so kind of choosing the talent. So they new riders will come in, and then he kind of leads in and kind of explains to them what my role is, so it's not like they're completely in the dark, and not real sure what I'm there for. But
who's this strange guy who keeps hanging around our tent?
Why does he keep trying to give me bottles
and feed me? Is this what's his job over here?
So he does a good job of prepping all the riders and letting them know kind of my role, and then it is a lot of just kind of feeling out, because I want to overstep any bounds of like, I want to give benefit of the doubt. Like, these riders do know what they're doing, right? Like, they have a good handle of things already. Otherwise they wouldn't be there. So, we just kind of hang out, and then you just get a feel for like, all right, here's something that I see where there's maybe potential for improvement, like here's an area that we could look at.
Well, but you're Turner's coach. Like,
right.
You're Turner's actual coach.
Yes.
How does that play out differently in your specific relationship with her? Like, or you're like, this is my coach hat, and I keep it in the truck. I'm going to go in and put it on, and you come back out, and you're like, now go do this.
Right.
Like, how does that work, especially within that team environment?
It's worked really well. We started working together right at the end of last season. And so we've had this whole off season and then this season to really kind of get things dialed in. And again, like she's a professional. Like, she doesn't need a lot of hand holding, So she knows what she's doing, and we've got the program written out, so she knows to rely on that. So I don't really have to crack any whips or anything, but it's little stuff like, hey, just I can give her a little bit more specific cues or specific encouragement during warm up or out on the course. That maybe is a little bit different than what I can give to a different rider that I don't know their program. But I think the hugs are just as big at the end of the race, those kind of things, whether I'm coaching the athlete or not.
She was sad that you were on retreat when she was at Trek.
Yeah.
We have it on recording.
It's not.
I will be happy to share it with you.
Sad is probably not the right
she was
adjective.
Jealous.
Disgruntled?
Grumpy, yes.
She's like, where is Jake?
Angry
Cell
texting.
Phone is off. I know he's on some retreat, or she's like, I need to talk to him. And we were like, Jake's in trouble.
I was completely unplugged.
That's fine, and that's good. That's important. You have to do that, I mean, but she was being facetious for sure. But it is neat because those relationships and as you build them out with all of those kids and in all of those spaces are different based on their personalities and what they need and the space they need. It has to be interesting for you as a parent. These kids are older than Tatum, right? Like, are you like filing away like dad lessons?
Yeah, it's
or
funny.
Like no, you're not doing that.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because sometimes we, you everybody gets loose, and everybody starts joking and making probably inappropriate comments and stuff. So it's like, oh yeah, you have to reel it in a little bit. Like, oh yeah, these kids are only 16. The youngest one's 16. So, and that's only 3 years older than my daughter, right? Like, so, all right. Make sure
there's some very definitive hard stops in our humor levels around here.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think back to the coaching comment of the thing that I do appreciate about being able to be a coach and be at the race is it's a big advantage to be able to watch it all go down. So I can watch the race and see like what's happening. Because if I just look at a file at the end of a race or rely on the race report from the athlete, it's not as good as what I see, in person. Because you can tell that, all right, you still have that drive well into the race, or maybe you don't. Maybe you went out hard for the first 2 laps and then you completely fell apart. So. It's just it's an advantage to be able to be there and see it firsthand and be able to quantify what you're seeing on paper or on the computer. So I think that's a good advantage or a good benefit to the relationship. Plus, I don't know. Anytime you get to watch your athletes race, I think it's a bonus.
Do you feel like this is the best thing that you've done in cycling in terms of, because you have this whole laundry list of items, and for anyone curious, you can go back and listen to the previous episodes with Jake, but talking about being a trainer, being a coach, being kind of this mentor, being a pro racer, all these things that you've done, When you were talking about racing, you were very introspective, and it never seemed like it was something that really lit a fire underneath you. I think it was more you pushing yourself. It wasn't necessarily the bike racing, but seeing you talk about this, seems like there's more to it. It seems like there's a little bit more meat on this bone. So I'm curious as to like where you're at in your life in terms of giving back to the sport and finding like greater, broader purpose.
Yeah, I was having this kind of similar conversation the other day with Linda, and because I feel like you look at your race career and you think, okay, well, the day that is over, I'm no longer racing elite, so I'm still racing, but I'm no longer racing elite and kind of out here for my own gains,
Sure.
That people aren't necessarily going to want to align with you, like you're not really, what do you really have to offer? What do you really have to, you're shifting to, okay, now I'm just going to be a coach. I'm going to be in the background or on the sidelines, but I find myself in this place where I'm doing these, bananas events like 350 DKXL and these crazy events, and that aren't really, I don't look at them as like being super competitive. You know what I mean? Like I'm not really like training like I was when I was racing.
Yeah, you called it a bucket list earlier. You said this is a bucket list thing. I've taken that off the, like, no, I didn't call it a bucket list. You said I've checked that mark.
That box.
Right, check that box.
Right. So, and then, I'm doing this film, and then I'm helping out with this development program. So all of these things, I feel like are more rewarding than when I was actually racing bikes, and doing that, full time as a, I mean, it was never really like paying the bills, but it was, I consider myself racing at a professional level,
Mm-hmm.
So, the film that we just did, we just screened it in Arkansas, and we did it as a fundraiser for the development program that's there in Bentonville, So like that is super fulfilling to be able to know that we're going to be able to give them, a check for like $700,
Right.
like, it's not a ton of money, but it's something that's going to be probably one more rider that they can support for a season, So there's that super fulfilling, being able to go and be there with the Alpha team and watch these riders go from kind of fledgling cross racers, U23 or even junior riders to, being at the top end of an elite race or winning their first UCI race or, racing their first World Cup. Those kind of things are, it's super fulfilling. And, as a parent, you get used to that. Like you start, kind of living, not necessarily living vicariously through your children's successes, but you find more pride in those successes than you ever did in your own success. I mean, we had that the other day with, we had like a parent teacher conference, and I just was like in tears because my daughter's doing great at school, and I never did, and I was like, that I felt a
Thanks,
sense of
Linda.
pride. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I felt a huge sense of pride in that, and not necessarily pride like look what I've done, but like proud for her.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
wow, she's really doing a great job.
Yeah. That's that L word showing up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Weird.
So, and I think that's exactly what you feel whenever you invest so much into time and effort into these riders. And, it was really touching last year to see Adam in a pretty raw state after Brandon won his UCI race in Boulder,
Yep.
And because I have a good idea, I mean, I don't know, I'm not going to by any means pretend like I know everything that's gone into this, but I have a good idea of everything that he's put into this this program, and for him to see that come through is, it's touching.
Yeah. So do you think that that all of the experiences in your life, in your pro career as you define it, and then as your kind of pro in other things career, leading you towards kind of where you're at now, and then looking towards the future, do you feel like you're on this path of kind of making a broader impact to the cycling community, and it feels like this direction that you're moving in of inspire and motivate and helping raise money and doing something bigger than yourself and giving back to Brandon and Turner and Ross and Adam and everybody that's around you and all of your athletes, all of these things, that you're looking at the much more broad picture. And it's always hard to predict the future, but is that kind of where you see yourself moving forward, is just, fully taking kind of yourself out of the equation from like selfish pursuits and just continuing on trying to give back and participate where you can to help other people?
Yeah, I think they do go hand in hand a little bit. Like you have created this platform, right, with your career, so you have this this breadth of support or breadth of like influence.
Sure.
Right. So you've created that, and now you're able to capitalize and build on it. Right. So, but without doing that stage, it wouldn't necessarily have as much weight.
Yeah. You wouldn't have the cachet to be able to say, hey, I stood on this platform.
Right. So, and I kind of find myself in those situations still of, I feel like if I completely stepped away from racing bikes, and just worked on like what you're saying, like just worked with coaching athletes and doing kind of advocacy work or fundraising work for development programs, I feel like there is a huge benefit to that, but there also is something about still being on the course. Like Adam and I have talked about it, like, hey man, do you think that my talents will be better if I just worked with the athletes? And he's been the one to convince me to say, no, I think it's very important for you to be also racing, like be out there. One, your intel that you get from pre-riding the course with the riders, racing the event earlier in the day, and be able to pass that information on. But it also gives them a level of respect as well. Like if I go out and have a good race, they're able to rely on my information, my intel that I bring back, and say, yeah, that's helpful.
Well, you can probably, and I mean, I'm sure that there's team competitions going on as to just like, Carrie and Becca of like who has the best performance. And I bet if you go out and you win your single speed race, they don't want to be the ones to let down the team average. So there's definitely something to that. But I mean, it's interesting the way you describe it as to, Adam being the one to say, don't stop racing. But then you made a couple comments that make me think that there's still, like, Jake still loves racing and still kind of partially defines himself as a bike racer. And it's obviously it's not a judgment call of any means. It's because you've been defining yourself as that for so long. You can't just like snap your fingers and be this other guy.
It's still fun, right?
It's still fun, and all these amazing opportunities still come up, so it's not like...
Then why not take them? Yeah.
Yeah, because I look at, like, I just had this call this week with, I can't tell you about it, but...
Quite a call with an unknown caller.
And so we got this really cool thing that's happening this summer, and she asked me if I want to do it. I'm like, yeah, I want to do it.
Right.
It sounds awesome. So I committed to it.
You're now in that phase where you said this in one of our earlier shows, that you can say yes to the dress, right? You can say yes to the things that you weren't able to say yes to before,
right?
And explore that side of it. But that competitive nature is still there, and I like that it's still providing some way of informing the other things that you're doing. It's not just that platform, but it's also giving you like, okay, I know what it's like to now. If any of the riders that you work with, that you care for in any fashion, are like, I want to do this really dumb DKXL thing, you can be like, all right, I have a roadmap that can give, like, do you want to go do land run, Turner, without any training? Okay, go. Like, all right. Yep. There are roadmaps that you can give people because you still are going out and seeking new experiences. I think that's important.
Well, and it's just a matter of where I am in my career and where I am, like, just mentally with everything, because I know we were going to chat about this a little later, but so I just started recording a podcast.
I think now is exactly when we talk about
perfect.
this. Yes.
And so one of the guests that we have had on, so we've got a few of them recorded. We're going to start pushing those out pretty soon here in the next week or so. We're going to start putting out.
They'll be out by the time the Pebbles here.
Oh, yeah. Good.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So it's
out. Go
November
find
1st, we're going to start the Find Your Form podcast.
Find Your Form. That makes some good sense since that is Form, your company.
Form Attainment Studio is my company. Yeah. So one of the guys we had on is a good friend of mine. He's an Xterra world champion and lives there in the Vail Valley. So, and he's my age. Like we're both born in '78, so we're both the same age. And he's still at the pointy end of the sport, and it's just it's just interesting to see where our paths have diverged, like he still wants to be dedicated to that sport and dedicated to being at the front of those races. And I've kind of shifted to doing these other events that are much more lifetime achievement awards. You know what I mean? Like these are things I just want to go and do because they're out there and I want to go do them. And I had said no for so long that now I'm going to say yes to them. So, and you could tell that he's just at that crossroads a little bit, like that crossroad isn't this year, but
he can see it down the road.
Yeah. And he's similar, right? Like we have a very similar path, like how we came to sport and came to cycling specifically. And then he found triathlon, but, he's like, yeah, there are so many cool events that I want to go do, but I know that if I still want to be, at the top level of Xterra, I've got to be focused on this. So I respect that. And, but it was just an awareness of here's where our paths are starting to diverge, because for this longest time we were on a very similar path, different sport. I was always racing cross and he was racing Xterra. So we would kind of overlap on the mountain bike world locally. And now it's just it's diverging a bit.
But I think there's a lot to that in going back to you continuing to race, because you're, regardless of if you were helping anybody at all, the fact that you go out, you perform in your event, you pre-ride, you look at the course, you take all of the things that you've ever applied in your career and you go out and you do your event and you come back and somebody after your race asks you what you thought of this or how I should approach my race. Just the fact that you're going out and doing it and approaching it in such a professional manner, but still doing it because it's fun and doing it because it's something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
That in itself is so important for not only young athletes, but athletes that are Doug and I's age.
Yeah.
Of all ages, just to remember that you can take it as seriously as you want and you can go down the rabbit hole as deep as you want to go. And you've been down the rabbit hole as deep as probably you can get. But if you stop doing it, or if you do it when you're not enjoying it, eventually it's going to come and bite you in the ass. And you still love it. You still love doing it. You still love getting muddy and sliding around and playing bikes with everybody and playing single speeder. And that's not going to change anytime soon. And as long as that's there, you're teaching so much before you ever even give any advice to any of those kids.
Sure.
That you're showing them, you're giving them the blueprint. It's like, here's how you do this. Here's how you make this thing sustainable. Because and I'm sure that they're already getting plenty of pressures. And we talked about a little bit with Brandon about, him because it was right about the time that he was questioning, like, am I going to be part of like Alpha Groove Subaru in 2019 and 2020 and beyond, and having these like very heady conversations about, well, is being a professional bike racer what I want to do, and like having these conversations, just because it's not racing cyclocross domestically is not something that you can, pay a mortgage for a nice house with generally.
Right.
Not even maybe an apartment.
But like having it's stress. There's so many stressors that come with choosing that path, and having somebody that's giving them a die that is saying, okay, yes, all of those things are there, and I can help you understand how to deal with all of them as they come up. But let's focus on this thing. Let's focus on playing bikes between the tape. And then we can take that as seriously as you want, or we can take it as lighthearted as you want. But honestly, the more fun that you have with it, the better your performances end up being. It's something that I've discovered of myself this year.
And you're modeling that for them, right? So that if they come to that crossroads earlier than, say, you or your friend did, right?
Yep.
They're like, there is a life beyond just being a bike racer.
Sure.
I can still love bikes and not have that. I mean, you can't. There are Cat 3s and Cat 4s in the men's field I have to race against who can't figure that out.
Right.
Or that's if you ask them, like on the Twitter profile,
right?
The first defining characteristic of who they are is they define themselves as a bike racer, or a cyclist, or whatever, or Cat 3 cyclocross racer. Like
now
that's
I'm gonna
the real
go look at my
one.
Twitter profile and see how bad it is.
Changing yours right now.
Yeah, change.
Yeah. I think mine is husband. I want to say, but that, like, those little like microcosms are it's so easy to forget and define yourself by.
But like to your point,
First thing I am is dog father.
That's accurate.
And then cyclist.
Yeah.
So, but to your point, Doug, it's I think that to be able to show these young riders that not everybody's going to have a pro contract, and not everyone's going to have this longevity in the sport where they're going to make money, and then
and that's okay,
right? And then, but you can still have a profession that is cycling centric, and still enjoy the sport.
Yep.
So to look at what that's what I hope, is that they can see that for me, I still love to race my bike. I'm doing these crazy events or these fun, single speed cross races. I have a business that is focused on health and wellness, bike fitting, those kind of things. So it's still cycling driven, and I'm relying on my expertise and my experience from when I was and am racing bikes, So I think that's a great model to show the current athletes, like the riders that are on the team, but then also to like what Meyerson was saying in the interview that you guys had with him, of modeling that passion to your children, and your spouse, your significant other, of like have that passion for something, and follow your dreams, and be sincere with it, And I think that early on in my career, I somehow stumbled upon Tom Hopper, and you guys know
he was
Tom.
just lying under a table or something.
And somehow our circles crossed, and it was right when I was getting to the elite level racing cross, and he was we became good friends, and he wanted to help support me and be my mechanic. So we traveled around for a couple seasons, just the two of us, and he was a great resource for me, and he helped me. I mean, he's so meticulous and he's so organized, So I think at one point he told me, I was just kind of maybe taking it as seriously as I could without appearing as if I'm going over the edge, of being like obsessed, and he made a comment about just being, even though you may not have that professional level support, you act as if you do, because you're going to perform as if you do, and then at some point that professional level support will come, and that stayed with me throughout my racing career and then into my professional career, with everything that I'm doing, whether it's with my business, whether it's with this film, whether it's with this podcast, whatever those situations are, is that you take it seriously and you take it professionally. You handle it professionally in this series of ways to break things down, And I think that that's probably one of the biggest things to learn from racing and riding bikes, especially at the competitive level, is the meticulous nature that you have to approach things if you're going to be at that, looking for those extra little 0.5% gains here and there, right? And I see that with all the Alpha Groove riders, is that they are able to put themselves in the situation and handle it in a professional way, and those patterns are going to carry on into whatever they go and do, whether that's bike racing, whether that's, in their relationships with their significant other, or whether it's, in their professional career beyond cycling.
This is going way back in the canon, but there was somebody that we were talking to, and we were talking about like digging trenches. And the more that you do a behavior, the deeper that specific trench gets. And that's why it's so hard to change patterns, is you end up falling back in that little valley, and
addiction, all those sort of things. That's part of that same falling on that track in a negative fashion, but in a positive fashion if you continue to build those pathways.
Yeah, and in this, it's like, you're talking about it with racing bikes, and somebody may do it as a junior and then go off to college and get the suit and tie and all of that stuff, but building those kind of channels early and showing the discipline that it takes to actually get to some sort of level of accomplishment, the amount of work that it requires to be fast on a bike and be competitive, whether it's just even regionally, let alone nationally, is astronomical. Right. And if you can implant that early and show somebody how to do that and give them kind of the tools as to, it's going to be hard, but you're going to reap rewards from it. And it doesn't matter if it's bike racing. It doesn't matter if it's the boardroom. It doesn't matter if it's the courtroom or wherever somebody ends up taking those learnings, that those things are going to make them a more dedicated individual. And another place we talked about is on Becca's episode. She said that she thinks that actually student athletes, she thinks, just came out and said it. Student athletes are more prepared for the world than a regular student or a regular athlete. Right. Because they're balancing all of these things, trying to be a student while also trying to be an elite level athlete, and you're trying to figure out how to be the best of both of those things and not sacrifice either one of them, because that's life.
Sure.
Well, I mean, don't you surround yourself with people that are going to lift you up, and you don't surround, my dad always says that you are the people that you hang out with. And I always was like, ha, ha, ha. And he's right 100%. If I hang out with people who are monitoring their behavior and working hard towards goals and are inspiring and motivating other people through what they're doing, whatever that is, I'm more likely to want to imitate that action, and I'm more likely to be inspired to do the same sort of thing. And it doesn't have to, like you said, John, it doesn't have to be through bike racing or whatever, but it is that same behavior, and that is what you're reinforcing in these kids. It's that, look, you can put in hard work here, or here, but as long as you're surrounded by good people doing that same sort of thing, and these kids are, I mean, cross races and the cycling scene in general are very positive, uplifting spaces as a culture. Now, there are exceptions to that, and we can all get deep into that. We've done that on episodes here for sure. But as a general rule, it is a positive and uplifting place where people are trying to do their best and give back. And I think that repetitiveness is in all our lives, which is why we keep gravitating back towards this stuff, and why we keep building relationships and businesses or investing ourselves in these spaces, because they are reaping rewards, because we're surrounding ourselves with more people who are doing the same things that inspire us.
Yeah. Well, and it's that like attracts like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an energy level, because you're vibrating at a certain energy, and the people around you, you're going to, either vibrate at that same energy or go up, or you're going to push away from that person.
And to that fact, that somebody that is vibrating at that positive energy level, that attracts.
Yeah.
Like, whereas somebody that is...
it completely pushes you away.
Right. Right. Yeah. It depends on what the specific polarity is. Like, a positive person can draw tons of people in or push people that
nuts.
that don't need to be part of that away. Just like negative people can create that cascading effect or garner followers and whatever's that.
So
we're not going to go down that rabbit hole.
No, that's not in this political climate. So you mentioned a podcast, the what is it called now? The Find Your Form podcast. What's the we're excited. Another podcast for us to listen to is cool, and you're obviously good at this. You've been on it several times.
You don't just listen to your own podcast?
No, you got to get inspiration from someplace.
Doug does. He gets mad at me when I don't.
Actually,
often.
he is real bad at listening to our shows after they're cut.
Well, someone's got to edit this shit, right?
That's me.
Yeah.
So I listen to it a lot, right? And sometimes I'm like, I can't listen to other shows. But what is the plan with the show?
Well,
and what inspired you be like, you know what I want to do?
Sure, being on here was, I think, probably the thing that put me over the precipice of deciding whether or not to do it. Because it was something that's been in the back of my mind. I've been on a few other podcasts and done interviews, and I listened to a ton. And it's something that I felt like I wanted to do. And then, let's see, I'm trying to remember how the timeline worked out, but I think I was maybe just on here with you guys, and then I was doing this this thing with the Lululemon. Oh, I had just done it.
Oh yeah,
right? I had just done it because I brought Bearing Gifts last time.
By the way, and now it's your fault that I am absolutely obsessed with Lululemon. So
mine got confiscated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to wear mine.
I'm only allowed to go to that store once a month.
All right, well let me know. I can help you guys out.
It's problematic in my life.
We can figure this thing out. So so when I was there, I one of the things that is amazing about that company is that they really want to provide resources to help you be your best self, as kind of cliche as that sounds a little bit right now. It's very buzzwordy and trendy, but it's real. It's true with them. So they, as an ambassador, we don't have any kind of obligations other than take advantage of the resources that they offer. Right. So, but we did a lot of kind of self work, that weekend. We were there for 4 days. And, one of the things they encouraged us to do was, what's something that scares you that you want to do that you're afraid to tell anybody about? And that was it. So the podcast, starting a podcast.
Hold up. What are you scared of? I
don't know.
You sat on that couch for 4.5 hours the first time we were here. So yeah, for all of you who listened to the first 2 versions of Jake's episode, those were maybe 3 hours worth of content.
Yeah, max.
There's so much on the cutting room floor that we talked about pre and
I'll
post
send you over a bunch of that because it's real good.
That you guys didn't hear, but you were so at ease with it, and that was the first time that really we had actually met and sat down and talked for any length of time outside of nationals, and it was like we had known you for years. So clearly you have a talent for
this was the opportunity, right? So I had made that commitment, and because it had been something that had been bouncing around in my head for a while, and then I made that commitment, I'm going to do this, and then I was here. And then this is my opportunity.
You did it.
I did it, right?
You did it, right?
You did a lot.
On this end, it's a little bit different than being on your end,
right?
And because I was overwhelmed with well, what do I do? How do I even record this thing? And what do I do about sound quality? And then instead of trying to make that happen on my end, I just found the right guy that knows how to do it. Right? Pointing at Doug.
Okay, I was pointing at Doug.
So my buddy.
See, we have a symbiotic relationship.
Sure.
I'm like the remore eel attached to the shark.
Well, it's our show is very unique that everything up until we stop recording is kind of where pre-production is me, and then you and I make the show, and then once we're done recording, it's Doug's got it. It's under control.
But then he does all the other stuff. Like, you have to have your roles. It's important, and that's great. So you found a simpatico human.
Yeah, so it's a similar scenario. Like, my buddy Steve is he's a local radio DJ.
Yeah, sure.
And so I go in all the time and just shoot the shit with him, like on whatever. I'm up early, right? Like, I'm usually at work at like a day where I like have a block. I'll just pop in and sit down on the radio. Where the kind of trial run that I needed to make sure that I could just ramble for this amount of time.
You're good.
Check.
Yeah, got it.
To talk about checking boxes.
Right.
Yeah, we got that box checked.
So, I'm really excited about it. And the premise behind it is just, it's kind of funny because it's turned into this silly hashtag of inspire and motivate, and that's what it's become for me, is this opportunity to have this platform to inspire and motivate other people. And it's one thing to do that as a bike racer, and hopefully you can inspire and motivate the people that are on the course or the people that see you do that thing. Or in the best case scenario, it's televised or it's captured on film and you get to put that out to multiple people. But then to be able to have a platform where you can have other inspiring and motivating people that have had these similar stories that people can relate to, and have a platform to put that out to people, to multiple people, hundreds of people. I mean, you probably have hundreds of subscribers, right?
I will not share our numbers because I don't want to brag or be.
It's got to be tens of hundreds.
It's millions. Let's just say it's millions. All right, millions. I mean, it is. It's a unique thing. But that sort of show is what this world needs more of.
Yeah.
Right? There are too many things that are going on where, like, I do listen to some political podcasts and whatnot, and they can be real depressing, right? I don't want to listen necessarily to people rehashing all that stuff. That's like, it is so good that is the tack you're taking is a thing that's near and dear to you, and then turning that into something that's a product that can touch multiple people's lives.
And even the media itself, the medium of podcasting.
Yep.
It's not a 22-minute block for a half-hour-long show. It's not 44 minutes every hour. We don't have to stop. I mean, we'll do sponsor promos or something in the middle, or when
Sarah McLachlan.
Yeah,
Sarah
when
McLachlan
we
covers.
try and ask you for money, and we try and entertain ourselves just as much as entertaining you guys when we're asking you for things. But there's no clock running. There's nothing like that. It's really just talk until you feel like you've covered what you want to talk about. And Doug, to your point of talking about political climate, is everything has to be down to a tweet or a soundbite, or it's got to fit in 8 seconds or anything like that. But if you take any of the people, again, politics, running for president, and sit them down and talk to them on a podcast, they're going to be a completely different person than they are on a debate stage when they have 15 seconds to give a response, because then you have to be 15-second version of yourself versus hour-long, well thought out, well spoken, measured, all of those things. And podcasting just offers you that opportunity to just talk and not feel stressed. And I mean, I can speak from our approach. Is the only way that it happened was we talked about it and we started doing it before we talked ourselves out of it.
Sure.
And then the first episode was we were sitting down to record it before I think I had a chance to really get nervous and think about what I was going to say. And then as we've added listeners and added listenership and all of that stuff, and had people like you come on and helped navigate the direction of the show, you just become to get more comfortable of, this is like the person that I am on our show it's just me talking. And it would be the same conversation that Doug and I would be having regardless of whether or not we're recording it.
Yeah, you're not playing a role.
Yeah, and there's just something that's magnetic about that as a medium in general, of it allows you to be Jake and Jake to come across for that hour or that 3 hours or however long you want to go talking to whoever, and people are going to get to know you broader than they ever would otherwise, unless they were actually part of your life.
I think people, with all the social media, that's out there, and just everything seems so.
Everybody's life on social media is so goddamn awesome.
So I think people just want people want the opportunity to see something that's authentic, right?
Sure.
So, yeah, I think that a podcast format allows you to do that. And it's really, when I started looking at it, it's like, it's not really pressure on my end. You just have to have, good guests on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
People that are interested to talk to.
So
and
how
honestly,
does that make you feel?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, honestly, that's the go-to question.
And even
right?
and even asking the questions is just remain engaged in the conversation and
Right.
ask the stuff that pops into your head. You might not ask all of the questions, but then cool, we get to come back, have you back on. We'll ask some more questions.
Right. Yeah. I was talking with. Have you listened to Payson McElvain's podcast?
I haven't. No.
Yeah. It's really good.
Well, then I'm gonna have to add it.
Yeah, he's had some great guests on. And, I was talking with him at Steamboat last year when we did the Steamboat Gravel. Actually, it was, I guess, this year back in August. And I was, again, like, you don't know how that's going to be received. Like, hey, I'm thinking about doing a podcast.
Right.
And I'm getting into your same territory. And everybody has been, like, you guys have been super supportive. Payson, when I talked to him, he's like, yeah, man, you totally should. It's awesome. You should do it. And here's like the 3 things that I would encourage you to think about, and it's just like getting into a cross race for the first time, like it's such an encouraging scene and people just want, it's not like you're fighting for any kind of, sponsorship
Bandwidth,
dollars
yeah.
or whatever, it's just like, yeah, man,
The
you should
internet's
totally do it.
Yeah, the internet's not getting any smaller. There's plenty of space for it.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's been cool. I'm really excited to launch the first one. I think we're looking to drop that one on November 1st. So I think the plan right now is just to put them out consistently. And I think where my bandwidth is to be able to handle everything that I have going on and keep things juggling and get the balls in the air, is I can commit to doing 12 during this first year, do one a month and then see where it goes. From there, maybe we can start to do more, or maybe we just do a year. We'll see.
Yeah, right. But I mean, you don't have to know the whole plan going in, right?
Right.
You knew what you needed to do to get to the door of DKXL, right? You knew the work you had to put in. You knew the things you had to learn about yourself. You knew you had to get your nutrition dialed. You had to do all these things, and you got to the door of that event.
Yep.
When that started, you were committed to do the thing. You'd done all the pre-work, and then you're like, this is where I'm going to go, and I'm going to give it all I have to this point. You're going to be committed to it, just like you said before. You're going to invest yourself and be in that space to do a thing, and you don't know where it goes. But you're opening that door, and you're going to be a professional about doing it and committing to that sort of thing. And I think that's something that we all have to, do in our personal lives and other spaces. And I'm excited you're getting into the podcast game. Now, this weekend, I will send Bill Schleichen your way to give you the whole please join WAP talk.
Right.
But it's cool. I mean, and I'm excited for you to do something and learn some new stuff. It's kind of fun. We'll give you any of our secret sauce on the side. We'll let you know what's up.
Yeah, I need the Cliff Notes.
There's not many. Just don't stop talking. That's mostly it. Well, this has been awesome. I don't want to go too late into the night tonight because we got a big weekend ahead of us here. I know you have to go do food shopping for all the kids.
Yeah, that's tomorrow.
Oh,
so
tomorrow's a big food shopping day.
Tonight's just dinner.
Oh, good.
Easy.
Peasy.
Super easy. Yeah.
Super peasy. Well, this has been awesome. Pebbles, this is Jake here for our 3rd episode with Jake.
Technically his second visit.
Second time in studio, but we chopped that first one up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we had to.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not going full Joe Rogan yet.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have all the equipment for that. That's the big thing. You want to talk about equipment? We can talk about equipment.
Yeah.
So awesome, Jake. As you know, we did last time. What do you want people to think about? We talked about a bunch of different stuff today, but what do you want people to take home with them from this episode?
I think what we talked about today that I really would like to reiterate with folks is that think that the fact that you approach something one way and something that you're passionate about, approach whatever you're passionate about, approach it in a methodical way. And then that pattern is going to carry over into your other relationships. So if you think about that one thing that you really get hyped about, then and how you approach that every time you engage with it, try to engage that same way with your relationship at work or your relationship at home. And, you know, your relationship, like for me, like the relationship with my daughter, you know, I should be as excited about and approach the relationship with my daughter as I am with my training to be ready for a race, you know. And I think that's, you know, our time that we have with those relationships is so limited, and so you want to maximize it, you know. So, you know, I think connection and maximizing those relationships is really what it's all about.
I've been having this come up a lot at work lately, and the phrase I Googled it again to see who the person that said it was, but I've been using it with a lot of people at work lately. Is the way that you do one thing is the way that you do everything.
Right.
And it's such a simple saying, and the one that you were looking for earlier that we looked up is everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end, and it's John Lennon.
Oh, there you
Which
go.
it's
That sounds about right.
from the same perspective of how simple something is, but when you really break down that sentence of to put yourself into everything.
Right.
Because you don't know if it's somebody's first impression of you that they may think that, you know, if you were just like, yeah, I just phoned that one in, they're going to be like, well, that guy phones in everything.
Yep.
And then you're starting to dig that trench.
Right.
And then you're going to start like, well, I phoned that in, so I can phone this in too. It's not a big deal.
Right.
And it's so easy to just fall into that and just be like, yeah, it's fine. Everything's fine.
Well, and it seems like a lot of times we let our guard down when we're with the ones we love the most, you know?
Sure.
Like that's when we kind of skate. You know what I mean? Like it's easy for me to, when it's 6 a.m. and I have a client coming in, and it's easy for me to get up about that and give them, you know, a great workout, and make sure that they get their full value, you know. But then when the day's done and we park the car in the garage and we walk in the house, instead of it being just an opportunity to relax, you know, and just say, okay, these ones love me, you know, like
right.
they're not gonna just
we're good,
just bounce if I don't, you know, show them the love that they deserve. Instead of doing that, then just tune it up a little bit, you know, when you walk in the door and like engage, you know, put the phone down, spend that time to make the eye contact and ask, how was your day, you know, and mean
and be genuine and be in that
right.
space. Yeah.
Right. And I don't know, that's been something that, because we're all so busy, you know, we're all so busy. We all have a lot going on. And it's so convenient to crack open the laptop or pull out the phone and I need to do this. I need to check up on this one thing or do a little bit of work before I go to bed, you know. And I think that that's fine if you need to make that time. But when it's family time, it's family time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when it's work time, it's work time. And it's on the bike to get
your miles in. It's on your bike to get your miles in.
Totally. So
and listen to Jake's new podcast.
Yeah, and I think that that's the thing is that you when you're focusing on that one thing, you're going to get way more out of it, you know, instead of like trying to focus on 3 different things. Get your bike ride in and do your laundry list that you got to get done for, you know, your to-do list for the day. And, you know, think about that phone call that you got to make when you get off the bike. Like, just focus on this. That stuff will be there when you get done, you know, and then you can focus on that 100%.
Right.
You know, and you may not get through all your lists throughout the day, but
it's full circle.
It is.
And you're gonna get through it, and it's gonna be successful.
Well, because like going back again, Lynn's, you don't have to make that decision right now.
Right.
You don't have to make that decision right now. Be in the moment.
Right.
Yeah. I like that.
Awesome, Jake. Thanks, man. We really appreciate you coming out, and this is awesome. We're really glad. To get to see you again and hang out all weekend. It's gonna be fun.
It's great. I'll have to have you guys on my podcast.
Yeah, we'd totally go. That would be weird.
It gives us a reason to go to Colorado. Darn.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, we're totally down for that.
No.
Totally down for that. Got to get out there.
That's why Ian's next episode is we're going to go to him.
Yeah, we're going to go.
Hawaii.
It's a business trip to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Can we write that off, John? Are there write-offs for this? I think we can figure this out. There's got to be some. This is like dark web podcast lore. We can figure this out. Someone call Aaron Mankey. We'll figure it out.
Sure.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. 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 Appreciate it.